even at 12 years old, do you really know what's best for you?
It's such a great question. You know, if I was going to trust a 12-year-old to pick the right clothes or the right boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, no, they don't make great decisions. But when you're talking about really fundamental things like what kind of relationship do you want with your parents, or where do you want to live, or do you want to be able to see a sibling, you're darn right they have a say in that. And they have, like I said, they are the expert in their life. Nobody else can know what their life has been like, what those relationships have been like. And so it's really important that when the judge is making that decision, they don't just hear from mom and dad, they hear from the child too, because it's going to affect their entire life.
So who represents the kids? God, I get tired of talking about the kids. Some people care about the kids, including Ashley Chase, who works for
the Office of the Child's Representative.
All right. Now, we've talked about foster kids before, and foster kids have a tough go in any state. Things seem to be getting marginally better for foster kids in Colorado. Would that be from a policy point of view?
Yes, I think so. I think we've seen a lot of reform in Colorado, and Colorado trying to lead the way. Like we have, we're really focusing more on prevention. We have a lot of focus on trying to keep families together rather than tearing them apart.
So you're the Catholic Church now.
Not quite. We've been doing things for foster youth, like trying to make sure they get driver's licenses and things that are going to help them be successful.
And the driver's license bill, which passed a couple years ago, it was one of the few things that Republicans and Democrats didn't fight about. And the idea was if you're in foster care, you can't get your parents' signature at 16 to get a driver's license, right, which means you can't get a job and you can't go see your friends and you can't have the regular teenage experience. This changed that. What else has happened for foster kids?
Well, currently we're working on a big change for foster kids.
Is this a big change?
It's a big change for the legal system and how we work with foster youth.
Yeah, just more lawyers. That's all I hear.
That's right.
More lawyers.
Yep.
All right. Let me see if I can understand. Let me explain the situation. See if I've got it. A foster kid is taken from a dangerous situation. Mm-hmm. How's that? Instead of ripped away from his loving parents by the evil government. Choose your narrative. And the parents have lawyers. Mm-hmm. The court has their guys. There's a judge. Somebody's got to represent the kids. Mm-hmm. Is that what your office does?
It is what our office was formed to do. So we don't actually represent the youth. We oversee the attorneys who represent the youth. There's about 270 attorneys across the state representing youth in all 22 judicial districts. And we support them. We provide the oversight and the training.
Are these private attorneys or do they work for the state?
They're independent contractors for the most part. There's some exceptions to that.
And is the state their only client?
It depends on the contractors. They really have a lot of independence. So some of them have multiple contracts. Some of them mix this public interest work with private work, and some dedicate themselves totally to the public interest work. And
they are, in essence, the kid's attorney.
They are, in essence, the kid's attorney, although it is complicated in child welfare.
Everything is complicated. Why can't anything be simple? All right. So the kid's got an attorney. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm imagining the Saturday Night Live skit where there's an infant in one of those baby buckets at the defense table, and the guy, my client demands this, that, and the other thing. My client is innocent of that and demands this from that. Exactly how would the lawyer know what his client demands?
Right. So now you're tying into why it's so complicated. In Colorado currently, our attorneys represent children of all ages, so from 0 to 21. And they represent the best interests of the child. So it's a little different than what you see on TV. They owe their duties of loyalty and confidentiality to the youth's best interest rather than the child themselves. And they independently investigate and make recommendations about what's in the best interest of that child. And they advocate for that in court. Exactly.
Here's I know lawyers. I hate all of them. No, I don't. The question is, how the hell did they become a judge instead of a lawyer? If I have an attorney and I'm brought up on charges, my attorney might say, you know, Caldara, in your best interest, you need to plea bargain this down. We can do this for you. And I say, no, I don't want to do that. We are going to fight this charge all the way. And he'll go, oh. But he has to. Mm-hmm. All right? If he had the power to say, well, I know that's what you want, John, and I don't blame you. No, my my responsibility is to what's in your best interest. He's no longer my attorney. He's a second judge. So I got to convince him of my case so that he can then convince the judge of my case. That can't stand. That's wrong.
It certainly seems wrong, particularly in the context you're talking about. But when you're talking about children or pre-verbal children, they do need that little extra hand. They need somebody there really looking out for the best interest, because obviously in this court experience, the adults that maybe would typically do that aren't available to them in that moment. So
that's why you get another child to represent the other kid. I watched Baby Boss. I know how this works. I've got kids. All right, so how do you guarantee that it's really in the kid's best interest if the kid doesn't have any authority to make that call?
We have really stringent practice standards to make sure these attorneys are doing thorough independent investigations. They have to make sure the court knows what the youth wants. And ultimately, it is up to the judge. So the judge is not just taking what the guardian ad litem, which is the type of attorney we're talking about. They're not just taking their word for it. They're getting information from parents, from the counties, from others, and then using all of that to make the determination. However, we do think for older youth, you're tying into it, they do need to have more of a say in that process and what happens.
Even parents who have been through divorces, sometimes you have to go through a family investigator, I forget what it's called, and this is the expert on your family that, parachutes in, looks around and goes, you're a good father or you're a bad father. And, how in the world do you know what's right because you're the expert? No, I know my kids. You don't know my kids. And it's I've never known anyone who's been through the process who felt like that family investigator who came in to advocate for the kid's point of view, what's best for them and when it comes to custody. I don't think I've ever met one person who said, oh yeah, they got it right.
Yeah.
They definitely got it right. So I can't imagine they get it right here either.
Yeah, luckily our attorneys spend a lot more time with the children and families, and they're with them for years in some cases. But you're right. That's why we're looking at changing the legal representation to say the child is an expert in their own life, and we need to be listening to what they think about it and helping them advocate for that in the court.
What's the House bill number?
It's 1038.
1038. It's already passed the State House.
That's right.
It was a pretty bitter fight to get it passed. What was the vote?
64-0.
64-0. All right, so completely unanimous. And if I understand it, it says if you're 12 or older, you get, I'm going to simplify this, you get an attorney that has to represent what you want, not what he or she thinks is best for you.
That's right.
Is this good?
It's wonderful. We think it's
Why is it wonderful?
Because it's really the next step to keep improving the system. We have really good legal representation for youth in Colorado. There are 13 states that don't even have legal representation for children still. But this is the next level to really make sure that youth buys into what's happening in court, that they have a say in what's happening in their lives, and it helps them understand it better. It helps them accept it better. It leads to better outcomes, we think. And truly, our agency just really strongly believes that youth need to have a voice in court, and we're here to uplift that voice.
I am 13 years old. I am pissed at my parents. I finally got the lawyer I want. Your Honor, my client demands a neck tattoo. It says, screw mom and dad. It's a neck tattoo. And I, representing him, and he now has more say in his own life. How can you stop his freedom of expression, his First Amendment rights to have the middle finger tattooed on his neck? Great. Now you've got an attorney at our expense who's going to work to get that kid a neck tattoo.
Yeah. The good thing is that what that attorney is really going to do is dig into the why, and they're going to work with the client. They're going to counsel the client about no judge in their right mind is going to let you get the middle finger tattoo, but let's talk about why this is important to you or what you really want.
There's some bad judges out there, right?
Well, there's also a lot of other people in the courtroom giving this judge information.
Wasn't there some really bad movie like in the 80s of a kid who sued his parents happily and to get his emancipation at like 12?
There were a lot of bad movies in the 80s, so it's really hard to
I don't remember which one that was. All right, fair enough. But I'm trying to get the unintended consequences that could pop out here. That even at 12 years old, do you really know what's best for you?
It's such a great question. If I was going to trust a 12-year-old to pick the right clothes or the right boyfriend or girlfriend, no, they don't make great decisions. But when you're talking about really fundamental things like what kind of relationship do you want with your parents, or where do you want to live, or do you want to be able to see a sibling, you're darn right they have a say in that. And they have, like I said, they are the expert in their life. Nobody else can know what their life has been like, what those relationships have been like. And so it's really important that when the judge is making that decision, they don't just hear from mom and dad, they hear from the child too, because it's going to affect their entire life.
What's it going to cost me?
You
and your damn foster kids.
That's right.
What is it going to cost me, the taxpayer? I got to hire another attorney now?
There is a $0 fiscal note on this bill.
How is that possible?
Because we already represent every single one of these kids in court. We're just upping our game. We're changing it a little bit and continuing to grow and improve it.
How do most of the attorneys, you said there's 270 of these attorneys, how do they feel about this change? If they really care about the kids, and by the way, I don't know, I've never known an attorney that cared about anybody, but how do they feel? If I were them, I'd say, wait a second, this is disempowering to me. Before, I could talk to the kid and say, he wants a neck tattoo, but I'm not asking you for a neck tattoo. Now, I have to go to the judge and go, we would like a neck tattoo, Your Honor.
Right.
Attorneys won't like this.
Well, it's interesting. First of all, our attorneys really do care about kids, believe it or not.
Yeah.
They are very dedicated to the youth they serve. And so, if we're being honest, it's been a little bit mixed. I think that the majority of our attorneys really embrace this. They've worked with these youth day in and day out, and they see how important it is to them to have a say, and they know that the court needs that information. There are certainly there's going to be some growing pains, and there's some uncomfortability about how to implement this, what it looks like. So there's a lot of questions, certainly. But I think at the end of the day, our attorneys really care a lot about the youth in court and making sure they have a voice. And so
I want to get to those people who don't like it. What are they saying?
They have concerns about kind of what you're speaking of, that, I may have to go to court and argue something that I don't believe in or that I don't think is best for a child, and they're worried about the child's safety. Luckily, Colorado's not the first state to do this. There are a lot of other states that have done this. This is really more a national trend. And so we've been able to take those questions to other states and ask them how this has played out in those states. And, we're really hearing that it's been a positive experience. And so some of those fears have not really manifested.
Let's wrap it up on this. So give me a real world example of how this would change for the better. In what situation would an observer know, oh, this is different because this law passed?
Well, I think if you're the youth, it's going to feel a lot different. You're going to have that true attorney-client privilege. You're going to have a confidential relationship. That's going to allow you to give...
Jump on that for a second.
Yeah.
So right now, if you're a kid, a foster kid, all the way up to, I'm assuming, 18?
21.
To 21, you don't have attorney-client privilege with your attorney?
Well, actually, last year we changed it so that at 18 you do have attorney-client privilege. But yes, so my duties as an attorney flow to that best interest of the child. So I don't have that traditional attorney-client privilege and relationship with that child.
Oh, that is crap. I mean, the whole legal system is based on the ability to be completely honest with your counselor, and he or she cannot spill the beans on it to anyone. But these kids who are 17, go, whatever I tell you, if I tell you something you don't like, you're going to tell mom and dad, you're going to tell the judge? Okay. Now I'm starting to get sold on this. All right, so give me that example one more time. So the change is there.
Yeah, the change is there. And, when the judge is making a decision about something like, I want to go home to my parents, and maybe parents are not in a safe situation yet, so the judge is not going to allow that. The judge is going to make that decision having heard the child. So from the child's perspective, their side of the story was heard. They had a say in what happened. So even if the judge says, no, I'm sorry, you can't go home yet, I need your parents to do some kind of treatment or something first, the child is going to be able to live with that in a different way because they actually were heard and they actually got to partake in that process. And so, it doesn't feel so terrible. It feels terrible to have people make decisions about you and never hear your side or let you weigh in.
All sounds great. If this starts turning that up in Boulder, attorneys now need to represent the interest of animals or something, that they have a client privilege, we'll fight over that next time.
That sounds good.
Thanks for everything you do, Ashley.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.